Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I'm here to just kick off and making sure we set the stage for an awesome webinar as we discuss the history of women in nuclear and our women leaders through that timeline. Just for sharing, I did get asked to share a story and relate it to the development of U.S. Wind. And I want to talk to you about the art or adopting the possibility mindset. I call it the art of the possibility mindset. And what does that mean? Eliminate those constraints that will shift you from what if I fail to what if I succeed. So how does that apply to me just in the last week? Julianne did ask me to share. I did complete my first full marathon last Saturday. I've been working towards it for about 3 years since I became a runner, and completing that 26.2 miles and coming across that finish line is what if I succeed? Boy, did I feel what the feeling was is what if you succeed? So instead of that self-doubt through the way, I was curious, I asked questions, and I created my team of running group, doctor, pacer, family, etc., that was going to support me along the way. And every single one of them was there with me on Saturday as I completed that. So how do I correlate that back to U.S. women in nuclear? It's really the possibility mindset. Back in 1999, the group of women who met in Washington, D.C., adopted that possibility mindset. What if we succeed? And 26 plus years later, that possibility mindset endures in our women in nuclear leadership and all of our members. I would like to acknowledge all of our leaders leaders and members that are on the call today, and especially that handful of women back in 1999, some of them that are here today, that helped us form United States Women in Nuclear, as well as the 6,000 members and 80 chapters today. Talk about possibility, right? I don't think we ever thought that was possible, but our possibility mindset, it was limitless at the time. So US was founded as our nuclear fleet was going through its first ever license extension from 40 to 60 years. And we had to tap into that diverse workforce, though that workforce that is our women. We set the tone that in 2026 is much like 1999, in which we are extending our fleet yet again. Isn't that exciting? We're talking about new builds, we're talking about license extensions, and we're talking about power uprates. And we have all of those ambitions to build to 3 times of what we are operating today. So as you engage with our leaders today, please note the chat is open. Tell us where you're calling in from. Pop in questions along the way. Engage with our other members that will be engaging during this time frame. We really prefer this not to be a lecture or training. We do want to interact with our members. So thank you all for joining today, and I'm looking forward to the next hour. So with that, we are going to get into our first session, and I am going to introduce Angie Howard, who will be painting the picture of what the early days looked like.
Great. Can you hear me?
We've got you, Angie.
Perfect. And Caitlin, if you can start the video. Well, just as Bonnie said, it was a great opportunity in 1999. I was at the Nuclear Energy Institute and the executive leadership and talking about license renewal. That was when Calvert Cliffs actually received its license renewal, the first one. And at a board meeting, the board members said, we don't really have the workforce to operate for 60 years. What are we going to do? And at that same time, we were seeing interest in nuclear through the climate change actions that were going on around the world. And taking a key from Women in Nuclear Global, we also then brought in, as Bonnie said, in 1999, a group of U.S. women who were in the industry. We then brought in representatives from WIM Global and sat down and really said, is this the art of the possible, as Bonnie so clearly described? So it was really a fascinating time to get that going. I feel like I'm the mother of Win in some respects, or probably even the grandmother of Win, because I started in this industry in 1969, not in 1999, and had a wonderful career at Duke Energy, then at IMPO, and then at the Nuclear Energy Institute. But all of that said, there was a lot of times when I was the only woman in the room, whether it was at conferences, not necessarily the only women at a conference, but in various committee meetings and other activities. And at the same time, we're seeing opposition to nuclear, and so many of the opposition was led by women, concerned and frightened. And so that was another aspect of women in nuclear as we were getting started. Were we able to, one, provide a resource for women in the industry so that they could come together and network, develop in professional development ways, and lead an advocacy role to talk to other women around the country. So it really has been an exciting time. So, Bonnie, you want to pick up from there?
Yes, Angie, just let me turn my camera back on. There we are. And so, as Angie stated, was often the only woman in the room. And even as we transitioned through this timeline, where we started in 1999, where I was just a chemist who had no idea that the opportunities in nuclear power for how my career could grow and how I could grow were pretty much limitless. There was a lot of opportunity out there. But how was I to make my desire to expand my role known? And so if we fast forward, this is post after I got my operating license, which, by the way, without one of our members on the team here, Margie Barnes, I never would have known a woman in operations was even possible, because that was not something that I had seen in my career. So I had achieved my SRO license right around the 2007 timeframe. I was being exposed to all these phenomenal opportunities through both the women and the men I engaged with during my Women in Nuclear activities. I just was like, what is next? What do I want to do? And so after those few years in operations, I sought out new opportunities for growth. Something I probably wouldn't done if I didn't have a bunch of folks nudging me along the way. And so my mentors and my sponsors, we discussed, what could those opportunities be? Let's think outside the box. We discussed for this SRO previous chemist, outage and projects might lead me to some opportunities. So in the early days of outage and projects, I'll say that we've gone a long way since come a long way since the early 2000s, as far as in our execution of projects, our relationships with our vendors, and really the level of proficiency experience we have. For myself, this was going to give me that cross-functional and supervisory and vendor relations experience that I don't think I would have gotten in any other role had I not stepped outside my norm and thought of what the possibilities could be. But there was a challenge. I hadn't done it before. Would they loan me from operations? For some of you guys, from you folks at the sites, we all know that we put our operators at a premium and typically don't let them go. Well, my mentors and sponsors and some mentors from Women in Nuclear helped me put together a sales package. And as a result, I was selected to be the day shift reactor vessel project manager for the outage. So I guess you have to be careful how good your sales pitch is. So now it was no longer a what if I fail, it was I could not fail. I was critical path for most of the outage. So how do I make it work? Well, it's really the same philosophy that I kicked off the meeting with, right? It's the art of the possibility. You need to be curious. You need to ask questions. You need to gain a strong technical knowledge and have those great relationships with those who do have that strong technical knowledge. So the end story is it was very successful. I did come back for the next outage as a loanee from operations in the same role. However, we did have a brand new reactor vessel full-time PM. So I actually got to be a teacher for him in my second outage that I was there. And I paint this picture because right now we have a huge workforce out there that are all looking for opportunities, but we also have the same huge workforce out there that can act as our mentors and our sponsors along the way. And being a member of US Win is one of those vehicles that we can use to be exposed to those opportunities and those people that might help us along the way.
Let me share an interesting story from one of the early days. As you see the timeline here, early days were conferences. We established a regional network. But I remember so specifically at a conference, it was about 2 or 3 years in, and there was a mechanic from San Onofre. And she came running up to several of us there and said, I can't believe it. I have just met another mechanic that works at a nuclear plant, and she's a woman. She was so excited because all of her career, and she was fairly mid-career, she had been the only woman mechanic and really one of the few women in craft at that site. And so that's just an example of the early days of the excitement that we saw as women started to realize there were other women in their field and they could talk to them, they could share stories, they could share experiences and advise each other. So that was, to me, one of the most impressive and has stuck with me all of these years about her excitement over that experience.
Thank you, Angie, for sharing that. And I remember you sharing that with me real live time as it
Yeah,
had happened. And,
that's right.
we often go back to that. And it was just such a, I'll say that was one of those goosebump moments that we said, wow, did we think it was possible to be here? Well, we didn't put any restrictions on what was possible at the time. So,
Right.
so as we continue to grow, and we do have several other members that I'll be passing the stage off to here as we move into our session that we're going to be discussing moments that mattered with these leaders that are coming up. So Angie and I will come off video and our next round of speakers will be coming on. And so I pass the stage off to you, Carol. Carol, I think you may still be muted.
I am off mute. Can you hear me now?
We got you, Carol. Thank you so much.
Perfect. All right. Good afternoon. My name is Carol Barajas, and I'm currently the Vice President of Outages and Projects and License Renewal for Tennessee Valley Authority. So honored to be here today so I can share really my emotional connection to the US Win. I'll start by saying that when I was in 1999, I was a senior reactor operator. And as Angie mentioned, I was the first of many. In fact, I was the only female in operations. And the only previous female they had was an AUO. So went to license training, got my license as an RO in 1997. And in 1998, I was a senior reactor operator. I remember feeling like I didn't belong. Not because of the work, but because my peers, everyone around me was so different, thought differently. We didn't have a common ground to, of course, discuss things. I was actually pregnant at the time, so I didn't have children yet. And I remember thinking, feeling very lonely. And then a friend of mine that worked at Braidwood, I worked at Dresden Nuclear Power Plant. She worked at Braidwood. She invited me to the US Wind Conference in the early 2000s. I got to that conference and I was amazed. There was a couple hundred females in the room. I actually connected with another individual who was a senior reactor operator, who was actually a shift manager. That instantly gave me hope. And I was amazed. I remember just being in awe the entire time I was there. And then Donna Jacobs was the first female plant manager in the country at Wolf Creek, and she spoke. Again, I mean, that just stayed with me for so long. The fact that, there was actually an avenue to progress. That first US Win conference really had a great impact on me. I stayed connected with several individuals, females, and especially Donna Jacobs. Now, of course, this was before, we had cell phones and texting, whatnot. I remember getting, over the period of the next few years, personal notes from Donna with encouragement about, being a shift manager and moving up the ranks in operations. I'll just say one story, probably Angie will relate to this, is when I first became a senior reactor operator, I was in a control room. They didn't even have a women's bathroom in the control room. They had to convert that bathroom. Every time I needed to go to the bathroom, I had to get a relief and then go outside the control room. That was just never thought of. So after all that, I'll just say that really what's important about WIN and what's had a made impact is that US WIN has created really an environment where people can belong. Where you feel like a sense of belonging when people look so different from you, or when you don't see the community around you that will support you. That environment is important to me. It's how I connected with US WIN. It's really around seeing a larger community out there that allows for support and encouragement. And I'll just say that if you're there and whatever you're doing, it's really around creating your own tribe where, you actually add value and you are valued day in, day out. And this is where, WIN can really have a real role, an impactful role for you for your future. That WIN conference meant a lot to me. I attended from that on, and then now I think it's really important that we pass along the encouragement, that we open up our community, and that we support each other so that we can help encourage females and supporters to take on additional roles or take on significant roles, because at the end of the day, it's really around what impact we can create, but also creating that larger community where we can feel a sense of belonging. This industry is kinder. This industry is kinder because of US WIN. It has taken 20 plus years to get us to where we are today, which is a much better environment. But it's a lot of people that leaned in to create that kinder environment. So I appreciate everything that US WIN has done for me, and it's about me supporting all the members that are currently there to show that it can be even better in the future, in the coming years. All right.
I think we go to me, Carol. I'm waiting.
Correct. Maureen, up to you. Thank you.
Wow. So hello, good morning from California. I'm Maureen Zawalek. I'm the Senior Vice President of Risk and Compliance and the Chief Risk Officer for Pacific Gas and Electric. So PG&E is the operator of Diablo Canyon Power Plant right behind me, beautiful with the whale and everything. I like to say it is the last operating nuclear power plant in California, but I've changed that to it's currently the last operating nuclear power plant in California. So really thinking about when US WIN started in 1999 and the renaissance we were in then and where we are now 26 years, soon to be 27 years later, it's been a phenomenal journey. I love the theme here of hope, possibility, mindset that the previous speakers have talked to. I'm very appreciative and humbled to have this opportunity to kind of share my journey and story at US WIN with you all. I've been in the industry since 1989. I graduated from University of Wisconsin in nuclear engineering, and I was the only female graduate from that program at that time. And hired on at Westinghouse in 1989. I was the only female that was hired on at that time in engineering there. And then they instantly put me on college recruiting, which was great. And I had the opportunity the next year to recruit and hire Pam Cowan. So many of you know Pam Cowan. She's been a big part of the beginning of Women in Nuclear. I love the story on Donna Jacobs. She actually worked out at Diablo Canyon for a while, which is outstanding. And you just have these stories of these inspirational women and mentors that have helped you along the way. And because of them, that's what I've tried to do my entire career is pay it forward and be mentors and be sponsors of other women. I was a nugget I learned, and I can't remember which win it was. I think mid 2000s. It was a portion of the conference, the annual conference, and it had a speaker talking about creating your personal board of directors. And that's surrounded by sponsors and mentors. And sponsors and mentors are different things. A sponsor is someone that has the influence and is at the table when decisions are being made about careers and things like that. A mentor can help you on many advice and professional development and things like that. And so I've always lived with that throughout my career, and I wouldn't be where I am today without the incredible mentors and sponsors that I've had the opportunity to know and that have helped me. So I definitely love the environment and the inspiration and the support that Women in Nuclear has brought to this industry. I was at the very first gathering in Washington. I couldn't participate too much because I had a newborn with me. She was 2 months old. And then I went on to the Harvard Radiological Emergency Preparedness Seminar up in Boston afterwards and carried her along with. So I was a new mom. And Women in Nuclear really helped me how to balance that because I was ready to retire because I didn't think it was possible to work at a nuclear power plant and be a mom. And with the support and the courage from other women, I had courage and I developed the very first part-time and telecommuting policies at Diablo Canyon, which was outstanding and allowed me to have both be a mom and also be a professional. So that was something I loved and gained from that support and that courage that I found from other women that I met at Women in Nuclear. And I love the annual conference. There is nothing like the Women in Nuclear annual conference. And I share this with our amazing PG&E Women in Nuclear chapter. Can't wait for the one in Seattle coming up. But it's all about nuclear technology, energy, academia is there, research is there. So you have that suite of topics and so forth. But then it's focused on communications and advocacy and external engagement and professional development and technology and innovation. So it's just an incredible diverse aspect of topics and agendas and fun. So I'm really looking forward to this year's annual conference. As I said, I took my newborn to the first one. The second one was in Las Vegas. I remember that. And it was at Flamingo. And I didn't stay there. I stayed somewhere else, but that's where she took her first steps. So, both my daughters are a big part of who I am as a professional and who I am in supporting Women in Nuclear. And just am really appreciative of this organization and love how many chapters we have right now and members and just keeping the mantra of paying it forward and helping others. So I just wanted to share that piece of the story, and I will pass it back to the rest of the panel for more discussion or any questions that are coming. I see a lot of great folks from the PG&E chapter, Diablo Canyon online. That's great.
Hi, Maureen. I'm on. I am having problems with my camera. Yay. So my camera's not going to come on. But this is Margie Barnes, and I love Women in Nuclear. After 42 years of service at Duke Energy, I retired in 2023. So 3 years now. But I have stayed involved with Women in Nuclear. So that's my tie to the nuclear industry because I love what Women in Nuclear is all about. I remember that first conference And I remember being in Washington with all these women and just friends. And if anybody knows me, I'm full of energy. So when I can get energized by something, something to be said. And so and then just seeing women from all walks of life and all levels of management, it gave you something to go, wow, I haven't seen that in my company. Now at Oconee, there was already two women reactor operators when I got hired in 1980. And so I had somebody to look up to. So I could see that we could get to at least the SRO level, but they didn't go any further than that. And there was nobody in the company except for maybe when we had somebody high in the organization, it was somebody they brought in from business or something like that. It wasn't somebody that worked their way through the organization. And one of the main reasons that I stayed for 42 years, because a lot of people kept going, why haven't you retired? When are you going to retire? But I wanted people to be able to look up and see that, hey, we can accomplish something, be it that they were Black, be it they're male, female, it didn't matter. If it's somebody that looked like me, hey, there's somebody up there that came through the ranks. And if she can achieve it, then I can achieve it also. And so I spent most of my career in operations. I spent 27 years in operations, and then I went to IMPO on a reverse loan assignment, and then left there. In the last 15 years of my career, I spent at various locations within Duke Energy. And for a few years, about 3 years of that time frame, I was outside of the nuclear industry. And those are the only 3 years from 1999 till now that I was not involved with women in nuclear, because the firewall is real. Whether we believe it or not, in nuclear, you don't see it. But when you're outside of nuclear, it's hard to get in. So those were probably the only 3 years that I was not involved with women in nuclear. One of the things that um, amazed me as being part of women in nuclear, the inception of it, and it kind of goes back to what some of these ladies have talked about already, but I'm going to call Donna Jacobs and Susan Landau. They were already in the executive positions, but what they did was give time to any of us that had questions, just wanted to talk. And so they just made themselves available to us. And that impressed upon me that, hey, if they can make themselves available to me as I go up the line, I have to make myself available to everybody else or anybody that wants to talk to me. Now, what one young lady reminded me of, because I was at a recent conference and saying, hey, I'll be willing to talk to anybody. I'll give you my number. But when she tapped me on the shoulder later on, going, yeah, but every now and then we have to pay you back. And so, but with this young lady, kind of like Bonnie was saying, I had tapped her. She was in engineering. And it's like, hey, why don't you try operations? And she did, and she is currently at SRO in operations. And we were talking a couple of weeks ago to say, you know, there's a lot of accomplishments behind my name, but I didn't set out to make accomplishments. I set out to have an opportunity to do good, to show what I could do for whomever, in this particular case with Duke Energy. And so because other people open themselves up to me and I open myself up to other people, I call it paying it forward. And so when you pay it forward, it's because somebody else has done something for you. And that allowed me to be part of the co-creator of GROW. GROW is our mentoring arm of Women in Nuclear. And GROW just stands for Growth, Relationships, Opportunities with.
I think we may have lost Margie, her connection.
Let me go ahead and pick up if I can. Caitlin, can you start my video? Okay. Now, this is Angie. Can you hear me? Hopefully Margie will come back on. Margie is a very key part of WIN. And one of the things that we established in the early 2000s was the Patricia Bryant Leadership Award. It's now the WIN Leadership Award. And Margie was one of the first recipients of that leadership award. And so she has done so much for WIN, and WIN has recognized her achievements as well. So I'm glad she's was able to share some of her aspects of her experiences. And it's just important. And I think if we all can come back on and have a little discussion. Caitlin, do we have any questions yet?
We do not.
Okay, well, let's kind of keep going as to how we see. Oh, we do have one here from Julianne. What challenge would you give to us as members of US WIN? Bonnie, you would take that first?
Well, I think the challenge that I would give to US WIN is, it's been my theme throughout that don't limit yourself, really engage and ask those curious questions and be thinking about what can you do next that would, as many folks have talked about, not only support the growth of the nuclear, the support of the company that you work for, but also your internal growth as you go through your career. Because as you grow, and that the better, I was going to say, the more you grow, the better you grow internally, then that's going to be what gives back to the nuclear industry as well as your organization. So don't limit yourself and be thinking about the what's possible.
Carol, you've given us some good thoughts. Anything else that you would like to respond to Julianne's question?
Yes, and Bonnie hits it on the head. This is about, this is the best time for all of us to lean in. Yeah. Lean in. I know it's sometimes scary. I'll just, give you a quick example. I was licensed on a boiling water reactor about in 2021. I was approached to lead the steam generator replacement at Watts Bar. I had to quickly get up to speed on what a steam generator did. But my point is, it's our first reaction is usually to go, I don't know much about this, or I'm not sure I can do this. And we're different. I'll just say, if you've ever read books about the difference between men and women, men tend to, just as a natural habit to believe that they, automatically can do it. And there's a little bit of, that's just the way it is, men are from Mars and women are from Venus, right? So, but my point is there's, it's this time when new nuclear is coming into, it's going to be reality very shortly here. So it's our time to lean in. And then also don't question yourself. You've got the supporters around you. If someone's tapped you on the shoulder on a challenge or a big project that you have no experience in, example, steam generator replacement, you can form your team, you can select who they are, you can embark on this, not with a sense of I do it all, but sense that you can get the right team together to be effective and be successful. So that's the beauty of being a leadership. We don't actually do physical work, but we actually work through others, and I think that's where the kindness comes naturally to many of us, and from a female perspective, and I think people will follow you. But I say lean in.
Maureen, you've had your challenges as a company, as Diablo Canyon, and all of the issues that you've fought through and have the unit online. One of the things that I feel like WIN has given the industry is retention. And could you talk a little bit about retention in the context of what you've gone through, how Lynn has perhaps played a role, particularly at Diablo.
You know, you read my mind, Angie. I was just going to add on to what Carol was saying. As I mentioned, 1989 in the mid 90s, you know, prior to WIN starting, there was a program you might remember, Angie. I think you were part of it, Energy America. That was a part. I think NEI was involved with that. Anyway, from the very beginning of my career, I was put out on the road at old radio stations, the way it used to be done, and news panels and things like that. There was a renaissance going on. I share a little bit of that because there was that momentum of advocacy and external engagement and building trust with communities and elected officials and all legislators and all of that that has been with me my whole career. And it's just interesting that I landed at Diablo Canyon, and one of the most challenging projects since its beginning in the 60s, 70s, and 80s and coming online. And then the shutting down announcement in 2016 to allow us to operate till our current licenses expired in 2024 and 2025. And then we get the call from the governor's office in 2022 to pivot the plant from shutting down to continue to operate. Then the Palisades stories and the restarts start happening. We never shut down, but we had to restart a ton. We had to hire up 350 new people because we were attriting and you know, transitioning into shutting down. We had to start up all new SRO classes, right? We did not have a lot of bench strength on SROs. Getting out in the market and buying uranium in the same year that the Russians invaded, Ukraine. So a lot of tenacity was needed. A lot of the possibility mindset we're talking about here. What needs to be true? The amazing women at Diablo Canyon and the co-workers there, everyone. How do we retain our employees was a big part of that. That's a lot about, employee engagement, professional development, feeding into that as well. So it's quite the story, but Women in Nuclear has helped with that advocacy and that building that trust. I think there's the story, right, about Global WIN when it started was after Chernobyl, right, Angie? And it was based on
Yes, yes.
the most trusted spokespersons in the communities were the public health nurses, the women. And I love that pillar of U.S. Women in Nuclear in each of our chapters because it's so needed for what like amazing women like Julianne Edwards is doing with the nuclear company and this rapid growth, the data centers and AR, quantum's coming next. We need more clean nuclear energy, not only for our energy scarcity we have going on, but also for our environment. So thanks for letting me share that pivot story of Diablo, but also in our industry, what we need to pivot to.
Yeah.
And women are a strong force behind all that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Part of what WIN has done as it has grown and matured is looking at not only how to network and bring women together for sharing and support of one another, but also looking at how to help women advance into senior management, part of the station and utilities leadership role. And obviously, Carol and Maureen, you have done that. We started a program called Nuclear Executives of Tomorrow a few years ago. And Bonnie, you have gone through that program. You want to give us a little sense of what you see as a result of that program and what it can do for the rest of WIN.
Yeah, thank you, Angie. And I love actually telling the story that, and it's a short one, but my first activity as part of the Win Next program was to reach out to our little small groups that they had established and just have that personal connection. And I love the thought that when it got scheduled, I was concerned because I knew I was making the drive from Mississippi to New York to take on the role to be the GM at Indian Point. And so it was absolutely amazing that the timing of the call and everything was right when I was crossing the Pennsylvania to New York border, and I had a team of other women leaders on the call with me, cheering me on, saying, "You've got this, right? You've got this. You can do this in your first role as general manager." So that was pretty cool. So I think that kind of speaks for itself on Next. But the one thing that Next, I think, has done that's almost a little bit silent, because it's not obvious, it's not an absolute goal out of the Next program, is that it has also brought along others with us, not just other women leaders, but also the men leaders in our organizations. They recognize the importance of the program. They support the program through all of their leadership. And in addition to that, this year, we're starting to have some men join us in the program. And one of the most profound statements that I think was made as we were discussing this transition was, one of the things about Next is like-minded people, get together and you have the support structure and can discuss some of those, I'm going to offer up, unique challenges that maybe the different genders or the, different genders may have in the workforce. So what's neat about this is those communications are going to continue. We'll have those discussions, those challenges that maybe the minority group might have, and being the only woman in the room, because that still does exist. But the difference is we now have men also that are gaining an understanding of what that means, and that feelings and that sense of maybe how to grow that sense of belonging out there to ensure that everybody's included in the conversation. So I think that really is the silent thing that's been occurring behind the scenes in the several years since we've been doing Next. And I'm looking forward to it because it's actually going to be a more active, obvious part of the program, with the bringing along men into the cohort.
Yeah. Margie, we lost you for a little bit there. I'm so glad you're back. And I did mention you were the first recipient of the Leadership Award. And tell us what that meant to you at that time, and how you've seen it play forward as through WIN.
So being the first recipient, I appreciate the award, but what was most impactful for me that particular day is that the president of Duke Energy introduced me. And
she
introduced me.
One of the first presidents of a utility.
Yes. And what was so impactful, though, is that when she introduced me, she talked about me beyond my job, beyond the role that I was playing in the industry. She and or her assistant had went and done homework on the things that I did before I came into the industry. They went and did homework on my little hometown of Westminster, South Carolina, who had just lost their only major grocery store. So we had no main grocery store, but for her to know that impacted me, to say that I was important enough to go and do some research on. And so consequently, because of that, that's why I do a lot of the things that I do. I try to make people feel important, that when I am talking to them or when I am doing something for them, that they realize that they are important to me and that they are worth my time. And so just being involved with WIN altogether, that's what I have found women to do. And especially like Adonna Jacobs and Susan Landau, in my case, when we first came in the industry, they gave us time. They were executives, and we could finally see, hey, we can be more than just a senior reactor operator, because I was a senior reactor operator when I got involved with Women in Nuclear. So we can be more than just that. And so those role models being present for us and just being able to, once again, be that recipient of that leadership award. Somebody saw something in me that I wasn't trying to present, it was just me. That's how I do business, right? And so, kind of like Bonnie was saying earlier, I see a potential in Bonnie and go, hey, let's tap that potential. Let's let her, hey, Bonnie, have you considered this? And so, when you open us up to ideas, it allows us to spread our wings and grow, right? And that's part of why I became a co-creator of Grow. And by the way, I had a great speech. I didn't realize I had dropped until I was finished with my speech. So it was just great. Y'all just missed a great speech.
Well, give us the essence of it.
The essence is paying it forward.
Yes,
It's all about paying it
absolutely,
forward
absolutely.
because I believe that's what Women in Nuclear presented to me when Susan and Donna opened up their hearts, minds, whatever, time to us. They paid it forward. And so I feel like that's what we do. That's what I do. Or that's what I did. And I still do it in a way, even though I'm retired and I'm not part of the nuclear, I'm not part of a company. I have stayed involved with US Wind because I believe in what we do. And so just the essence of it is just paying it forward. And that's why I became co-creator of Grow, Grow being our mentoring arm of US Win. And so it's about growth, relationships, opportunities within US Women in Nuclear.
Yeah.
And so um and so with that, uh, you know, I'll tell one experience. So right as I was transitioning from INPO, so I went to, and did a reverse loan position at INPO. And so the goal is that when you leave, you return back to your company. But when I was returning back to my company, is like, is there more things out there for me? And so I remember calling Donna Jacobs and just having an open, honest, frank conversation with her, which is not something I felt like I could do with somebody inside my company. Because if you have that similar conversation inside your company, there's potential for your pay performance to be affected. There's potential for growth opportunities to be impacted. But being able to talk to somebody outside of my company and just laying it all on the line, she opened me up to other opportunities and ways to potentially do what I wanted to do going back in the company and just, hey, there's other opportunities out there other than operations. And so that's what Grow does to me. It connects mentees with people outside of their company for the most part, unless they specifically ask for somebody inside their company, but open them up to somebody outside of their company so that they can be just as transparent as they want to be. And then they give them other ideas of and how to accomplish something. So
Yep,
that's the
it's
essence of
a
it.
great program. Let me, as we're starting to finish up, Women in Nuclear has been very successful. And for someone that's been involved since the beginning, it's so rewarding to see what the membership has accomplished. But are there still things that women in nuclear need to be doing today? We talked about new generation. Um, we haven't really talked about work-life balance and whether that's real or not. It's like a tilt one way or the other, someone has said. But let me ask each of you, is there something that US Wind can help solve that's a need that's out there today? Carol, do you have a thought on that?
Is she coming off mute here? I think one of the biggest problems in the industry is really attracting. We're going to need a lot of resources for all the work we've got going on. And I mean, I'm talking from one utility, but every utility is doing this. They're extending their licenses. They're investing in plants that are 40 plus years old. We're going to need construction level expertise. I think the problem statement we need as US Win is how we bring in more, not just professional engineers, but also the trades. How are we making nuclear attractive to the broader population in the US to come? I mean, we tend to, of course, we go to schools but it's time for us to really step up, every one of us, and then really advocate for nuclear, and not just advocate for an engineering role or, a leadership role. It's every position. So that is a problem we need to solve here in the very near future.
Yeah. Bonnie, you're on here?
Yeah. So that was wonderful. And she kind of stole my one, but I had a two. And I think that although I think many of us may feel that we have brought a sense of empowerment and such to our workforce, as we bring in the new generations into the workforce, I think we need to continue and find a way to make it more impactful, that our members, our employees, and everything really do feel they have a voice, and also understand that it is their responsibility to use their voice in order to seek out those possibilities and opportunities. Because if we wait to be asked, sometimes we're going to end up to be number 10 in line. So really, continuing with that empowerment. And there's a lot we can do with just the Grow Mentee program and just our informal mentoring that we do. But I still see that we've got room to grow, no pun intended, but room to grow in that arena.
Well, and that's particularly true from what you both said, with the new generation of workforce, and not only new people, new ways of thinking, but also new tools, and how we incorporate some of these new tools, including, the word of the day, AI. So it's a continuum of continuous learning. Marie, your thoughts on this?
It's excuse me. It's a thread between, really Carol and Bonnie. I definitely agree. It's a full workforce pipeline that we need. It's the trades, it's the engineers, it's the business majors, it's, the chemists, the biologists, the environmental engineer, all of that. And so I'm really grounded on like the pipeline, and the focus that we need in the pipeline. I just had a wonderful one-on-one chat with Ella Jacobs from Duke University, and she's so involved. I saw her at the RIC, and I saw her win last year. I actually met her at Next. I met her at Next in Atlanta last fall. But that's the time I want to make. I love the stories of Donna Jacobs and Susan and Pam Cowan I shared, of we all need to make the time to help with that investment in the pipeline of coworkers that we need to bring in to the growth that we need in this industry to support the load growth and the grids across our country.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Margie, some thoughts?
Yeah, just a couple, and it's going to be along the same line that everybody, but this is a story. So a couple of weeks ago, me and another young lady, SRO from Oconee, went to our technical college to speak on it during their Women's in History month. And and it was on nuclear though. And so one of the first questions I asked them was, do y'all know where Oconee Nuclear Station is? Because in 1980, when I got hired, my house was 25 minutes from Oconee, and I knew nothing about it. And those same freshmen today still knows nothing about the fact that this nuclear station is 30 minutes from where they're going to school. So we, as in the industry, have to make them aware of, here we are, and these are the different crafts that we need. It's more than just engineering, it's more than just operations, right? So that's one. So going back to what everybody else has said. And then two, if you're already inside the industry, one of our sayings in Grow is get comfortable being uncomfortable. Because when we're comfortable, we don't want to move, right? But if I'm willing to get uncomfortable, I'm willing to try different opportunities. And so that's one of the things that we try to instill in our mentees as part of the Grow program.
Right.
That's what I have.
Okay, that is terrific. We are at 12:58, and we're committed to end at 1. But those of you who participated with chat comments and others, please feel free to reach out to any of us. I know we would be responsive to you. If you have questions or thoughts or ideas, how we can make this better, and what else that US Win can do for you and you can do for US Win. So thanks to all the panelists who participated. Great conversation, and have a good part of the rest of your day.